Xiao, the last Yaksha alive, conqueror of demons, and you'll be conquering alright, as Xiao is a really powerful DPS and is able to wipe out pretty much anything in your way. Today, we're going to be looking at Xiao, taking an in-depth look to his talents, discuss the best weapons and artifacts, and much more. Hi, my name is Avarice and thanks on clicking on my guide. If you want to check out something in particular, I'll be leaving the timestamps in the description below. So without wasting more time, let's begin. For a quick overview of Xiao, we're going to be looking at his base stats at level 80, compared to every other polearm user at level 80 as well. We're also going to be looking at all his talents at level 8 as well, which is what you're going to be seeing in the background. So, starting with his HP, is at 11,236, which is above average. His attack is at 308, which is actually the highest out of any polearm user, and his defense is at 705, which is above average. Keep in mind that these stats can quickly change depending on the artifacts he is using or the weapon he has as well. To get Xiao to Phase Ascension 5, which is the Phase Ascension we're going to be working with, and this will also upgrade his crit rate, you're going to need 1 Vayura Turquoise Silver, 9 Fragments, and 9 Chunks. You're also going to need 18 Slime Condensates, 30 Secretions, and 12 Concentrates. You're also going to need 108 Qixing, which can mostly be found throughout Liyue in places that are very high up, such as Xingshun Peak or Wuwang Hill. And for the boss material required, you're going to need 26 Juvenile Jade, which is obtained by defeating the Primal Geo Bishop. For Phase Ascension 6, you're going to need 6 gems, 20 more jades, 60 more Qixing, and 24 more secretions. And now for talent materials. This is just to get one talent from level 1 to level 8. So, for this, you're going to need 6 slime condensates, 22 secretions, and 10 concentrates. You're also going to need prosperity books, which is available in the Taishan mansions on Mondays, Thursdays, and Sundays. You're going to need 3 teachings, 21 guides, and 10 philosophies. And for the weekly boss item required, it's going to be 2 Shadow of the Warriors, which is obtained by the weekly Golden House challenge. The cost for this will be 502,500 Mora, and this is to get 2 talents to level 8, and this is to get 3 talents to level 8. Xiao's normal attack, Whirlwind Thrust, has a high combo at 6 attacks. Here's his attacks in 4 different angles. And this is in slow motion. His first hit does a double 43.5% damage, which totals at 87%, which is very high. His second hit deals 89.9% damage, which is the highest second hit out of any polearm user. His third hit deals 108.3% damage, which is also very high. And his fourth hit deals a double 59.5% damage, which totals at 119%, and is actually the highest fourth hit out of any polearm user. His fifth hit is at 113%, which is above average, and his final 6th hit deals 151.4% damage, which is actually the highest 6th hit out of any polearm user. So basically, Xiao hits consistently hard except for his charge attack, which deals 191.3% damage, which is below average. But all his plunge attacks are the highest out of all polearm users, with his regular plunge being at 139.9%, low being 279.7%, and high being 349.4%. For Xiao's skill, Lemnis Static Wind Cycling may deal just 1 instant strike, but it can be quite a heavy blow to enemies. When activated, Xiao will lunge forward, dealing animal damage to enemies in his way. You start off with 2 charges and you can use this in midair as well, with the cooldown being 10 seconds for each use. Although it's recommended not to use both charges right away, we'll get to that in a bit in his passive talents. And his burst, Bane of All Evil, will make Xiao go pretty much bat crazy. He wears his Yaksha mask and will have new abilities. First one being a huge increase in jump height, increased damage to normal, charge, and plunge damage, increased AoE to his plunge, which will cause multiple spears to come out the ground on contact, and finally, infuses his attacks with animal damage. However, this comes at a great cost. During this state, it will cause some serious stress into Xiao, which will make him lose HP over time. The higher talent you have his burst at, the lower damage is taken, and at level 7 and beyond, Xiao would just lose 2% of his current HP per second. It can only drain down to 1 HP though. It won't kill you, but it will make it really easy for others to do so. It's highly recommended to use him as much as possible for his plunge damage when using his burst, and be mindful if you switch to a new character, you will make him lose this state until you get his burst back again. Another cost you have to pay for while in this new state is that his skill will not be able to generate animal particles. This will last 15 seconds with a cooldown of 18 seconds. The energy cost is a little bit on the expensive side, requiring 70 energy to charge up. For Xiao's first passive, unlocked after the first ascension, Conqueror of Evil, Tamer of Demons, while under the effects of his burst, all damage dealt by Xiao increases by 5%. Damage increases by a further 5% for every 3 seconds the ability persists. The maximum damage bonus for this is 25%. So this pretty much encourages you to stay in his burst anyways if you want to deal even more damage, which you will get after 12 seconds after his burst duration. His second passive, Dissolution Aeon, Heaven Fall, unlocked after his 4th ascension, using his skill will increase the damage of the subsequent uses of his next skill by 15%. This effect lasts for 7 seconds and has a maximum of 3 stacks. Gaining a new stack refreshes the effect's duration. This means after using his skill, the next use will have a 15% damage bonus lasting for 7 seconds, with the ability to reset the duration if you gain another stack, with a max of 3 stacks. So going back to his skill, if you use up both charges up at once, you will not be able to get this passive to the max stack. Since the effect lasts for 7 seconds, it won't be possible to get the max stack if you use up both charges up right away, because the cooldown for one is 10 seconds. So if you want to take advantage of this, wait at least a little over 3 seconds before using up his next charge. And for Xiao's final passive talent, Transcession, Gravity Defier, decreases climbing stamina consumption for your own party members by 20%. This will not be stackable with other passive talents that provide the same exact effect. For talent priorities, we will discuss the best talents you should level up first for Xiao, or which ones to possibly skip if they're not useful to him, in order to avoid making you waste your hard-earned mora and tons of resources, since you know, leveling up characters isn't cheap. So the first talent you should be going for is his normal attack. Heavily recommended if you want to use him as his most popular position, a main DPS. As we've seen before in his normal attack, he can deal consistent high damage compared to every other polearm user in the game, so it's safe to say you won't be regretting leveling this up. For the second talent you should be leveling up is his burst. This is where you can get the most damage out of him. This talent should be very close to your normal attack's talent level. I would say this should be your first talent to level up, but if I'm being honest, the only thing that's holding me back from saying that is that his continuous loss of HP during his burst is very noticeable and kind of annoying if you don't have a shielder, healer, or food on you. So this kind of forces Xiao to have another party member dedicated to help out Xiao, since he can't heal himself and you can't eat food during the Spiral Abyss. But other than that, he does hit pretty hard, especially his plunge. And as said before, at level 7 and beyond, he will only lose 2% of his HP per second, so try to get it to at least level 7 to deal more damage without losing that much HP. And that brings us to his last talent to level up, which is his skill. Definitely the last thing you want to focus on, but still get it to a reasonable level. It does good amount of damage and has 2 charges as well, which is pretty useful. It isn't a bad skill at all, it's just that his burst outshines this, and his normal attack would be used far more often if you're aiming for a main DPS Xiao. Not to mention that this skill is also kinda hindered, since you can't gain animal particles if you use it while Xiao's burst duration is active. For Xiao's first constellation, Dissolution Aeon, Destroyer of Worlds, will increase his skill charges up by 1, making the total charges of his skill up to 3. I wouldn't say it's exactly worth it in my opinion if you're just aiming for C1, since his skill already has a second charge, which is already something not a lot of characters have. Most characters even require a constellation to get a second charge in the first place. His second constellation, Annihilation Aeon, Blossom of Kaleidos, when in a party and not in a field, Xiao's energy recharge is increased by 25%. For a C2, in my honest opinion, I wouldn't say this is exactly worth it. If you're going to be using Xiao as a main DPS, then that means you're going to want him to be on the field for the longest time out of anybody else in your party. And that already makes the skill a little bit less useful. And it also sounds like it should have been a passive talent. Even Ayato has a similar ability to this, but as a passive. So in my opinion, this C2 isn't exactly worth it. Only worth it if you have a really good sub DPS that you constantly rotate into. His third constellation, Conqueror of Evil, Wrath Deity, increases the level of his skill by 3, with the max upgrade being level 15. In his fourth constellation, Transcension, Extinction of Suffering, when Xiao's HP falls below 50%, he gains a 100% defense bonus. This is definitely helpful since you will get hit quite a bit, and through personal experience, sometimes Xiao can really not take a hit. Xiao's fifth constellation, Evolution Aeon, Origin of Ignorance, increases his burst level by 3, with the maximum upgrade being level 15. And for his final sixth constellation, Conqueror of Evil, Guardian Yaksha, while under the effects of his burst, hitting at least 2 opponents with his plunging attack will immediately give him 1 charge of his skill back, and for the next 1 second, he may use his skill while ignoring the cooldown. This will definitely make you prioritize his skill much more, since by then, not only you will have 3 charges, you can pretty much spam them. As long as you hit 2 people with your plunge, you can get a charge right back. Not to mention that 1 second you get to fully spam that skill. For weapons, we'll be discussing Xiao's top picks for 5-star weapons, as well as top picks for 4-star weapons in case you don't have any of the 5 stars. So for the first 5-star choice we have is the Primordial Jade Wing Spear. Second side is crit rate, and this will increase attack by 3.2% at R1 on hit for 6 seconds. This has a max of 7 stacks, and this can only occur once every 0.3 seconds. And when you get to the max stack, damage is increased further by 12% at R1. The wielder will give off a green glow to let you know that the max stack has been activated, and the tip of the spear will have a green aura around it. This is definitely a top pick for Xiao as a main DPS. Pair this up with his passive that further boosts damage over time, and you can expect some crazy numbers pretty early on. For the second 5-star pick we have is the Staff of Homa. Second side is crit damage, and this will increase HP by 20% at R1. This will also provide an attack bonus based off 0.8% of the wielder's max HP at R1. And when the wielder's HP is below 50%, this attack bonus will increase to an additional 1% of the wielder's max HP. A good choice for Xiao as well, since getting below 50% of max HP will be easy since his burst will get him there whether he likes it or not. And for the final pick we have is the Calamity Queller. Second side is attack percent, and this will increase all elemental damage by 12% at R1. He will also obtain consummation for 20 seconds after using his skill, which will cause his attack to increase by 3.2% per second at R1. This has a max of 6 stacks, and when the wielder is off the field, this consummation attack increase is doubled. A decent choice for Xiao, boosting his animal damage as well as his attack. Although if you have any of the 5 stars I previously mentioned, I wouldn't say use this over them, since he won't be able to take full advantage of this weapon since he doesn't have any off-field abilities to help his other team members. This is just a decent substitute for the Jade Spear. And now onto the 4 stars. So, for the first 4-star pick we have is the Prototype Star Glitter. Second side is Energy Recharge, and after using an elemental skill, it will increase normal and charge attacks by 8% for 12 seconds with a max of 2 stacks. This is definitely a good choice since you can get to the max stack easily, boosting his normal attacks while you're charging up his burst. It's also free to play friendly since you can craft this spear and get it to the higher refinements more easily, unlocking even more damage for your normal attacks. The second 4-star pick we have is the Deathmatch. Second side being crit rate, and this will increase your attack and defense by 16% at R1 if there's at least 2 enemies nearby. If there's less than 2 opponents, then attack will be increased by 24% at R1. A good choice for Xiao as well, but probably not a popular one, since a lot of people are free to play. The only way to get this weapon is to get it through the $10 battle pass. And for the final 4-star pick we have is the Blackcliff Pole. Second side being crit damage, and after defeating an opponent, attack will be increased by 12% at R1 for 30 seconds. This has a max of 3 stacks, and each stack will have its own duration independent of the other. Another solid pick for Xiao, and it's kinda free to play friendly. You can get this weapon through the shop by using the leftover coins you get from getting duplicate items through wishes. It may take a little bit to save up for, but if you don't mind spending 5 wishes worth of coins, then this weapon will serve you well. For artifacts, we'll be discussing the best sets for Xiao, as well as the main and subsets for him to get the max out of him. So for the best set you can put on Xiao is a 4-piece Vermilion Hereafter, with the 2-piece increasing his attack by 18% and the 4-piece set increasing his attack by 8% for 16 seconds when he uses his burst. Also, when he loses HP, his attack will increase further by 10% every 0.8 seconds with a max of 4 stacks. This effect will go away once he leaves the field, or will be reset if he uses his burst again. This is definitely the top pick for Xiao, since this will increase his damage based off his HP lost, which he will be losing anyway when he is using his burst. Another popular pick for him is the 2-piece Viridescent Venerer, which will increase his animal damage bonus by 15% and pair it up with any set that increases attack, so it can either be Gladiators, Shimenawas, Vermilion, or Echoes of an Offering. But if you don't have any good rolls on any of your Viridescent artifacts, a double 2-piece set of any attack percent would also work quite well. I used this before getting a proper Viridescent artifact, and I can say it can work out pretty well. For main stats, we will just be focusing on a main DPS Xiao build, since he doesn't have any traits that will let him be a support. So luckily, Xiao is a simple character, and doesn't scale off anything, so his sands should be an attack percent sands. He will also want his cup to be an animal damage bonus goblet to boost his damage further when he activates his burst. And finally, either crit rate or crit damage hat. If you already have a crit rate weapon, then I recommend to go for a crit damage hat, since you have another chance of increasing rate through substats, and not only will a crit rate weapon increase some crit, Xiao himself will upgrade crit for himself the higher you ascend him. And for the substats, it's quite simple as well. The top two choices you want on your substats, especially on Xiao, is crit rate and crit damage. Another substat you want on his ideal artifact is attack percent, to boost his damage even further. And finally, energy recharge, since his burst is a little bit on the expensive side, so it will take a little bit to charge up. And now for team comps. If you're watching me for the first time, I have this system when recommending teams, which is to pick out the best handful of team members to support Xiao and have you mix and match them, instead of just recommending one team. I do this in case you don't have a certain character, don't have them built, or you simply don't like using them. So keeping Xiao as a main DPS in mind, for the first type of support we want is a healer. This is because, as we've seen before, his burst will slowly kill him. And in places like the Spiral Abyss where you can't use food, you will want some way to heal up Xiao. So for the top pick healer we have is Jean. This is because not only she can heal Xiao pretty well, she can also hold her own with her attacks and skill. She can also use her skill to help Xiao charge up his burst as well, and having two animal characters will activate animal resonance. This will decrease stamina consumption by 15%, increase movement speed by 10%, and shorten skill cooldowns by 5%. Another pick for healer if you don't have Jean is Kokomi. Since she can heal pretty well, and her skill will allow for off-field damage while healing your active character at the same time. So using her with Xiao will also allow for some Sorrel reactions. Although if you don't have Kokomi, then Barbara can function really similarly to her. And finally, we have Bennett as the final pick for healer. Not only is Bennett used as a healer, he is also used pretty oftenly to boost damage of other characters. Although healing is nice, having enemies being unable to hit Xiao can work just as good too. So for the next type of support we have are shielders. So coming in first is Zhongli. If built right, his shield can be near indestructible, so Xiao doesn't have to worry about losing HP any further. Not to mention he can also be a good burst DPS, since his burst can deal massive damage. But if you don't have Zhongli, then Noelle can work too. She may have a little bit of a weaker shield, but she can also work a little bit as a healer as well. And if you have her at C1, then her healing capabilities are greatly increased, so she can be a good pick if you want a healer and shielder in one. And speaking about 2 in 1, Diona can work as well. Her skill can activate a shield, and her burst is almost fully dedicated into healing. And for the final choice we have as a healer is Qiqi. If you were unlucky in your 50-50s and got Qiqi, and if you gave up and finally built her, then she can also be a good healer for Xiao. For sub DPS options, we have a few as well. First one being Hu Tao. She's able to give out huge damage with her pyro infused hits, and she can be a good rotation with Xiao. Although since they both lose HP when their skills are active, then maybe you will want to look more into having a healer or shielder on your team. Another good choice is Beidou. Not only she can function as a sub DPS when Xiao needs to be out for a bit, but Beidou can also be used to provide a shield at C1, protecting Xiao. Another good choice for sub DPS is the Raiden Shogun, capable of dealing good burst damage and can also provide a little bit of off-field damage support too. She is also someone who can still use her off-field attacks when plunging, so this can be really useful for Xiao if you're aiming for Sorrel reactions. And finally, we have Izayato, being able to do great damage with his skill, and his burst can be used as support since it does off-field damage and can be used to increase normal attacks for others, and it also allows for Xiao to do some Sorrel damage as well. And now for off-field support. This is mostly dedicated for characters that can help Xiao increase damage or do their own damage while they're not in the field. So coming in first is Yaemiko. Since Xiao can't absorb elements unlike most animal characters, he can still create Sorrel damage. She's helpful because she can still attack without normal attacks, unlike some other popular support characters. Another off-field support is Sucrose. She can use her burst to infuse her element with another, boost elemental damage, and group enemies up as well. She can also be used as a battery for Xiao if you have her at least at C1. Venti can also group enemies up as well, but since you want to plunge a lot with Xiao, it's best to keep enemies close to the ground as much as possible. Kazuha can work just as well too, functioning similarly to Sucrose, being able to infuse his burst with a different element and boost elemental damage. We also have Ganyu and Rosaria as off-field support, since both their bursts can cover an area, helping Xiao create Sorrel damage. They could also be used as sub DPSs as well. Yelan and Xingqiu may also be a choice as well, but as said before, you want to deal a lot of plunge damage when using his burst, so they won't be able to do damage like that, only through normal attacks. And while I'd say it's a fun thing to try, it's not really an optimal way if you want to get the most out of him. As I said before, this is a mix and match system, so you can pick whoever you want from this list, and they'll work out pretty great with each other. like main DPS Xiao, Noelle for shielding and healing, Sucrose to group them up, and Nayato as a sub DPS, or main DPS Xiao, Bennett healer, Rosaria burst support, and Beidou sub DPS. It all works out the way you want to. So Xiao is quite a simple character to understand. He isn't quite as complex as others, and can deal pretty heavy damage with not that much investment. So should you pull for him? Honestly, I say yes, especially if you're looking for a great main DPS. He hits hard in almost every single way, he's easy to build, and easy to farm for those lower AR players. He's easy to play as well, since all he does is plunge attacks, but my only complaint with him is his HP drain with his burst. So you must have a healer of some sort, or have a huge stack of food to heal him every time he's done using his burst. Also, since his main damage with his burst comes from plunges, that already takes out the possibilities to get proper off-field support from Yelan or Xiao. But then again, he's already really powerful without that much elemental support. But other than that, he is a really powerful character. A little bit edgy if I'm being real, but a fun character. Even while I was building him, with below decent artifacts and level 6 talents, he was still hitting quite hard, and it just kept increasing the higher I got him. Well, obviously that's how it works, but I was just not expecting him to do that much damage at a lower talent level. So overall, I'm pretty satisfied with this character. Anyways, thank you so much for watching the whole way through. It does mean a lot. It does take a fat minute to create guides like this, and if you want to see more of that, I have a full playlist of other character guides right here, as well as other Genshin related content. If you like what you saw, please leave a like and subscribe while you're at it. The button doesn't bite, trust me, you can click it. So yeah, thanks again for watching. More guides like this will be coming soon, and other Genshin related content. Thank you guys again one more time for watching, and I will see you next time.